So it looks like the board members might need another second.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if they can hear us yet or not.
Okay.
Shanna just came physically in here to ask me a question, so I think she'll go back in there and get things going in a bit.
Okay. Greg, is your screen share enabled?
No, just a moment. All right, screen sharing does now work. Or
Right,
should.
no. Great. I'm gonna email you some minutes. I can't share it on my screen, but when we come to that time, will you be able to share it, please?
Oh, gotcha. Yes, I can do that.
Thank you. Okay. Greg, do you know if they have sound yet?
I don't know. Board members, if you can hear me, can you raise your hand? Looks like not. I'll physically walk over. Oh, there we go, maybe.
Renee's right.
All right, we can hear the board members. Board members, can you hear me?
Yeah. Renee.
Randy, but I don't want to shake your hand.
Trevor.
Board members, can you hear us on Zoom?
Hear you, but I guess you couldn't hear me because I was talking back.
We can't hear you.
Shall I go ahead and log in so I can hear?
You could, there might be a problem here. Do you want me to text Jamie? I'll give him a call.
Okay.
We'll call it. This happened last time, so I'm sure it's. I should put going to be a presentation on the front of my phone. I can see everything now. Amazing. I gotta work off this phone. One straight to.
I have
progressive.
And I have, yeah, I have to get it.
Okay.
Don't work.
That's
But I
why it
cannot
went
see
straight
it.
to voicemail.
You can't hear them?
Right. I just tried to call you. I thought you were just ignoring me.
All right, I'll test again. Can you hear me yet? All right, can you hear me now?
Oh, nice.
Hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, Greg.
That was a great technical solution there, Jamie, turning up the volume on the television. Excellent work.
Is Jamie coming up?
Huh? He's right here next to you. Oh, I gotta get yours going.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting, as I know we have some time sensitivity issues. So I'm going to go ahead and call this second budget committee meeting to order May 24th, 2022 at 5:34 p.m.
So let's join.
Okay. Today we have budget presentation and questions, possibility of approval, setting tax levies, and adjourning meetings. Before we begin, I typed up some last minute minutes from last meeting. If Greg could share those on the screen, and if you could view over the minutes. What I do not have in the minutes is who is present from board and from budget, staff, and others. So if you have something to fill in there, that would be very
Yeah, I
helpful.
can hear it. Yes, thank you. Hey Siri,
I believe everybody was
turn on
here,
voiceover.
I think.
Okay, I turned on voiceover.
VoiceOver speaks descriptions of items on the screen and can be used to control the computer using.
Hold on,
Sorry.
technical difficulties.
If you already know.
I don't know.
The VoiceOver Quick Start. In this Quick Start, you'll
Disable
learn
account,
VoiceOver
disable
basics
I'm
as well
talking.
as important VoiceOver commands to
I know, I
help you
think it's
navigate on your
around.
Mac and use apps. You can exit the Quick Start at any time and finish it later.
Well,
To advance through the Quick Start panels now, use the arrow keys located to the right of the main keyboard keys on a portable.
Rebecca is muted, so Jamie, if you're able to mute her mic, that would be.
I don't know what is happening.
I
That's all right.
did yours.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Trevor, I won't touch my computer, okay?
Okay, there we go.
Okay, thank you.
No, no. That's
Sorry about that.
Okay.
That's something I did on this or?
Can we please go ahead and let us know who was here and who was maybe absent for the last meeting? I just did change the date so it reflects the January meeting, and I changed that to budget meeting on the top.
And just so you know, do you need me to do the live version? I did a PDF version of it so that I can keep it clean. Do you need me to switch and share the Google Doc as you're working on it?
That would be great, so we could fill it in and pass those. I just don't feel comfortable holding a meeting without the minutes. Thank you, Greg.
Is that visible enough or is it too small? It's always hard for me to know what's showing on your end.
Any other things to add to this, to the minutes? Okay. All right, can I have an approval for the, or a motion to approve the minutes, please?
A motion to approve the minutes.
A second.
Thank you. Can you tell me who moved?
Judy Croft.
Thank you.
Ed and Rick seconded. Rick Lee.
Excellent. Is anyone able to take notes today?
I can do that, Kat. It's Judy.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, great. So motion has been moved by Judy, seconded by Rick to approve the minutes from the April 24th meeting. All those in favor, raise hands or say aye.
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 It looks like it's passed. Motion's passed. Okay, thank you very much, Greg, for showing that. I'm going to go ahead and at this moment turn the meeting over to Nikki Fowler for the presentation and questions.
Great, thank you, Kat. Do you mind putting Leia up there? Great, thank you. Hope you're okay. So I wanted to start out with acknowledging we had canceled last Tuesday's meeting, the detail meeting, partly because there were no questions that came forward, so there wasn't anything really new to present at that point in time. And in talking to everybody, it just we just weren't set up and ready to go for it from a staffing standpoint for the day. So that's why we extended this meeting a little bit longer. We're still on track to approve tonight if folks feel like they have enough information. At the end of the meeting, if we're not in that place, we can talk about adding a meeting, and that would be next Tuesday. So I have that preset on the budget or the board meeting agenda. If we need to add a meeting, we can make that motion and do that at the board meeting. So just putting that out there up front as to where we are right now. Are there any questions about that? Nope. Okay. Let me go to the next one, Shannon. Thanks. So this is a quick agenda for my presentation. We'll just have to update the revenue, a little bit more enrollment information. Some of it's a recap to try to remind folks of where we're at. District staffing update. There were some questions around the fees and supplies at our last meeting when we were together, so I have a little more information with that. And then the next parts are general updates. Some of it is around questions that I received since the last meeting, and just details of what, sorry, details of items that I may have adjusted in the budget, added to the budget, or taken out of the budget, just some highlights of those things. In general, the budget overall is really flat. We maintained staffing. We didn't make adjustments in many other areas. So it's very similar to last year's budget that we rolled forward, other than giving the automatic steps to everybody that they get. Next one, please. This is an overall look of our total of the budget. We're at 261,793,000. The bulk of that, of course, is in our bond fund. We haven't spent a ton this year as far as that big number. Hasn't changed much because we also had bond proceeds and we have interest in there that's offsetting some of our spending. So I imagine this next year, you're going to see that start to decline with our bigger projects this summer. As we go into the next year, though, yeah, we have a lot of things going on. Go to the next one, please. We did receive this update May 19th for 22-23. There was next to no change from the February number that I've been working from. There was just a little bit of adjustment in some of our weightings, but ultimately the bottom line, there was nothing significant there to justify any changes to the budget. Next one. This is the calculation. We've gone over this before, but I don't know if there's any questions. So again, the first box looks at our 22-23 versus our 21-22. So if we ultimately we'd be paid at the higher of the two. That is not our final 21-22 number. That is where we sit as of, that was a May 6th estimate as well. But as you know, it's a year later, we get the final number. And then just going down, are there any questions on this? I know I covered this last time, but it's kind of a messy calculation. Do you have this down now? Okay, perfect. Go to the next one. And this is looking at the weightings. So those numbers, the ADMW at the bottom. So 21-22, we're looking at just over 5,000 with the weighting. It's showing our student count at 4,300, which is a little bit high. That hasn't been changed for a period, that hasn't been updated in their estimates for a period of time. 22-23, we're estimating 4,200. We're actually dipping under that already. But looking at being paid at the higher of the 2 years, we would still, even if that dips down a little bit more, funding wise, this would be an appropriate revenue to look at. The estimate would be appropriate to use at this point. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Next one. Thank you. I'll go ahead and hit it a few more times. One more. There you go. Before we presented it, we did it year by year and asking people what they noticed between each line. So this was just, again, to remind everyone how far we've come. Beginning in 17-18, we were at 5,077. We're down to 4,238 as of that April count that was in this graph. So that's about 916 students over those years. Go ahead and go next one. Thank you. That's about a 15% enrollment decline over that time. And so this is my chart I keep in-house. It has a ton more years that are out there where I track the history and everything, but this is just a snapshot of where our most current estimate.
Vicki,
Yes,
this is Kat. I have a question about district enrollment trend.
okay.
We said 916 students since 2017, 15% decline. We know as a state overall that enrollment is down, but how does that compare to other districts? Are they having a 15% decline?
I don't know if they're quite at 15% exactly, but I know it's an issue across the state. Declining enrollment is most districts, every district that I've heard from is in the same boat of losing students. But I don't know if it's as big of a decline. We already knew ours was going to go down based on the study that was done prior to doing the bond. We knew that trend, and it's still going to continue probably for the next 5 or 6 years unless there's a significant change in the community or prices of housing and all those different pieces. But COVID and being out of school made that dramatically drop. As you recall, there was a difference of about 400 students over that 1 year during COVID. So, and again, I was expecting those students to return this year as we came back in person, and we did not recover those, and we lost more. So it is difficult to guess the enrollment because there's been no rhyme or reason to it. We're just trying to budget as close to safe as I can and follow the trends and look at where we're at and try to be responsible about it. Anything more,
Nope.
Kat? Okay.
Nope, thank you. I appreciate it.
So on the bottom of this slide, it's just to give you a picture of what enrollment numbers mean in relation to dollars. So the 1 year decline from the gray column, our SSF estimate, down to the purple pink column, the 5,047, that's 119 kids. And you're looking at 1.1 million in that 1 year decline. So, and looking at the 916 over that 5 year span, that's a pretty significant hit there. That was been a slow trend over the years declining. So it's just to give you an idea of where we are, why we're talking adjustments. I'm going to the next one, please. One of the questions that came in, so I'm going to just kind of toss in some different information based on the questions that were sent to me, was what are our class size averages? So in the box to the left, you see where, and this is current, this is this year. So across the district, our elementary numbers are in the 19 to 21. So those are looking good. They're looking probably lower than a lot of districts. In our middle school, you can see those. Again, there's some bubbles in there. I'm not sure the humanities why that's a bit higher. But again, we're 22, 24. PEs tend to be higher. You can do that in those types of classes. And then looking at the high school, they're all in the mid to low 20s across the high school. So as we move forward through this budget, we looked at the staff to student ratio. We were looking at 25 to 1 as an average. That meaning not every class is going to be 25, you know, your PE can be 30, 35 at different ages, and that's going to compensate for those classes that you need to have at lower numbers. So moving forward into our budgeting cycle this year, we were looking at, okay, these are the class sizes, they are low, typically, most of them. And so we could adjust those a little bit by making a 25-to-1 ratio.
Nikki, were those numbers current? Or are they like first a year or?
No, those were current. That was actually, those were from our May
Thanks.
numbers. Those are like now numbers.
And are you looking to make that 25-to-1 ratio through attrition or otherwise?
I will get to that, Kat. Thank you for helping me with my presentation.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I will speak to that in just a minute. I'm just teasing you. So this is just kind of recapping where we are now. There's been a lot of movement, so just letting folks know where we are. We have, it says Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, should correct that. Myself at the district office, Karen Pugsley, Director of Teaching and Learning, Ann Zeal, Director of Special Programs, Larry Hampton, Coordinator Operation Safety and door greeter. Currently open for 22-23 right now. We have posted the Nutrition Services Director, so Shiloh's position. And the job that just closed was the Communications and Community Relations Coordinator, that we're starting to process those applications and score those applications this week, hopefully. And next one, please. And then we have Jillian Felizarta, Coordinator of Federal Grant Programs. So she manages the title grant. She's lucky enough, she has earned the SIA grant, the ESSER grants that have come in. She does my grant, ELD. And basically any grant that has come in, we've asked her to help with, and she's done great with getting us organized, getting them on the calendar. And then, if she needs help, she seeks help from, around whoever should be contributing to that grant. That's been great, staying on top of all those pieces. Nicole Hyatt, Student Services Coordinator. So she's helped support the special education program more on the mental health behavior side, or that was the intent when this position came on. And Greg Koskela is now in the next year's budget 100% bond manager. And that's why we have that communications position open, because that was the other part of his job. And Shanna, right here to my right, administrative assistant to the superintendent, and many other duties as assigned. Two other positions that have been at the district office, the director of strategic partnerships, which would have been Luke Neff, is not filled, it's not posted, and I do not have it in the budget. Assistant superintendent, who was Derek Brown. Same thing, not filled. We don't have it posted, and that position is not budgeted.
I have a question. Why is assistant superintendent not budgeted?
Because there was no money to budget it. Our budget is that low. We had to make reductions and stuff. If this is a position that is deemed needed to come back, we'll have to reduce further positions elsewhere.
Did we advertise that in our advertisement
Or what advertisement?
when we went out for the through Desiree for the position for superintendent? Wasn't the assistant superintendent part of that language?
Not that
Dr.
I'm
Botany.
aware of.
We talked about that one night. He was pretty clear on that.
So I don't know what was talked about as far as outside. I know what is in the budget at this point.
That was
And
in a
we've
board
talked
meeting.
about
We
it.
talked about that.
I remember talking about it as the next superintendent would make that decision,
Mhm,
but it wasn't part of like the position posting or anything.
mhm. And that was, I do recall that some of the positions were being held off on because to realign and decide what might be needed or not. But to make it balance, those are not in there. So we'd have to pull from something else, whatever that is. Maybe a direct correlation of reduction someplace, or out of ESSER and bumping things out of ESSER funds. So.
Could we go back to the previous screen?
Mhm.
Could communications and community relations coordinator be, I mean, I don't know if the pay grade is the same, but could that be a position that some of those duties be part of the assistant superintendent role?
Yeah, I don't know. In theory, it could be if you built a superintendent role. It just depends what you put on that plate and how you define that job. It changes. It's different in every district. Sometimes it's a assistant superintendent with an HR hat. Sometimes it's an assistant superintendent with a curriculum hat. Sometimes, it just depends what the needs are and the skills of the other staff in the district to fill all those holes.
So is it fair to say that that would be one that is a potential position to support the superintendent in an assistant role?
It could go towards it. It wouldn't cover it.
Yeah, I think I would be hesitant to do that just because communications is an intense job and definitely a full-time job. And at this point, I don't know if you'll remember, but Dr. Novotny suggesting that we spend additional resources on getting a communications plan even in place. So I think we're in desperate need of strong, clear communications. And I would hate to hire an assistant superintendent and then basically have that person be a communications person only, because assistant superintendent does so many other important things. I'm not discounting, I mean, it might be harder to find candidates for that executive level if we're tacking on other duties, but maybe not. But I think communication specifically would be a tricky one.
So I guess we can reach a consensus that there is a role of assistant superintendent that is important, and that is something that we should advocate for if we want to support our new superintendent to be successful in his role.
I don't agree with that.
I don't
agree with that either. I think with our current enrollment drop, our budget is tight enough. Adding another district office executive staff is going to take up even more of our budget and directly relate to other positions that will be affected.
Dr. Phillips also explained that he wanted time to get into the role to talk to the players, the worker, the people who are in the positions already, and to work around to maybe move positions. I think if we say that we have to have an assistant superintendent, that's tying his hands and the budget's hands. And so I think we should let him work into the position, get to know the people, get to know his staff, to be able to make the best decisions of who's going to do what role.
I think that not having a budgeted position for an assistant superintendent will tie him to not have the help and support that he may need to be successful in achieving a lot of these tasks that we have. And
what position do you feel that does that mean we RIF teachers, classified members, other staff members to support him in his high position versus supporting the students? Or what programs do you anticipate?
I do not have an oversight of who's who in the zoo or what positions are there. I don't have that information. I'm trying to advocate for an assistant to the superintendent. So I don't
Can I clarify for a minute, please? This is Kat. I know Rebecca's been talking, but I'm unfamiliar with the other voice. And since part of us
This is
on
Raquel.
Zoom,
I'm sorry,
Thank you,
this is
Raquel.
Raquel. You're very welcome.
that's okay. Thank you.
I mean, I
Go
can
ahead,
add,
Raquel. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just, as I'm looking at this and looking at other districts that have superintendent and they have assistant superintendent and they have an important role to help support the district. I'm just trying to advocate to see if there is a place for us to have this position on the budget. That's all.
I would just
So I
add to
think
that.
historically, sorry,
Go ahead,
this is
Kat.
Kat.
No,
I
go
think
ahead.
Historically, in the past, thank you. Historically, in the past, if you've looked at our budget, we've only had a assistant superintendent for at most 2, maybe 3 years. Before that, we just had the superintendent. If you look at districts of our size and population, most of them just have a superintendent and other executive cabinet members. Most our size do not have an assistant superintendent.
Wasn't Dave Parker an assistant superintendent to Dr. Kim?
He was, but we had close to 5,000 students then.
Yep. And he was assistant superintendent. He was our first, and he was with us for 2 years. And our second was Derek classified as assistant superintendent.
Yeah, just this last year, and
Yep.
we adjusted to that as the bond ramped up and we have so many community meetings. And so that was part of that reason, so Derek could step into more of those day-to-day things. But as we are now, we've kind of adjusted to that a bit by pushing Greg over to that bond manager piece. So he's attending all of those, along with Larry goes to most of those as well. So the reason that was put into place at the time has changed a bit. So, but prior to that, when I first got here, there was just a superintendent.
So why did we not have this discussion a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago with Derek Brown?
What
He wasn't an assistant superintendent 2 or 3 years ago.
But we promoted him. to
The
that.
first 2,
The board
correct me
had
if I'm wrong on
approved
this, the first 2, if not 3 years, he was director.
Teaching and
Yeah,
learning.
teaching and learning, right?
Mhm.
And it was only within the last year that he was bumped up to assistant superintendent because we had so few people in the cabinet. And so he was taking over the duties of that. I don't disagree that an assistant superintendent is an important position, but for our enrollment and our budget, I don't think it's doable this time. That's not meaning to say in the following years it wouldn't be. If we see enrollment go up and we see demand go up, maybe then it's important. But right now, I don't think it's I agree with what Kat said. It doesn't make any sense to hire an additional cabinet level person with that high level of salary in exchange for cutting classroom support or programming.
I also would caution against juggling things around to use the ESSER funds to fund it. The ESSER funds are not a permanent fund. Those will be dwindling in the next year or 2.
This is Melissa Daly, and I think we have now about an hour to go over the budget. We haven't even heard the full presentation. I think we should move forward and then look at issues that others would like to bring up with the budget at that time.
Great. Yeah, we can do that. And then there'll be time at the end for questions or anything else and a decision as far as whether we need another meeting or not. Let's see. Okay, so we talked about this one. So fees and supplies, there were some questions at the first meeting around this. Prior to COVID, prior to ESSER funds, athletic fees sent to the district, revenue sent to the district was at about $75,000. We chose through the ESSER funding to not charge student fees, thinking of it as an equity basis as far as so many families weren't working. We're trying to ease the pain on the community with all these extra fees. So it was a thought at the time to not charge the participation fees. And so where we brought in 75,000 prior to that, we were able to, through ESSER, bring in 104,000 from ESSER because all fees were charged. We didn't go through students and figure out who might have been on free and reduced, where under the prior system, they might have had a reduced fee. Because at this point, we weren't doing the free and reduced system right now because everybody, we're not doing the applications. There wasn't a way to do that at this point. Also in that, with the classroom fees, we didn't charge those, but we allocated 35,000 to the high school in lieu of charging the students. So those teachers would just order those supplies that they would typically buy out of that student fee pot of money out of this, and 10,000 for each middle school. And then at the elementary level, where the district purchased the student supplies at the elementary level, was about 45,000. I think it actually inched a little bit over that by the end. At this time, We plan to follow the same process. We had budgeted over the 2 years, last year and the current year and the upcoming year. Let's see, I'm not sure if there's anything else with that.
So the plan is to follow the same model next year,
Yes.
to not charge fees?
Mhm.
And what's the reason behind that?
Because when we originally rolled it out, we just planned it for the 2 years, thinking recovery from COVID and all the economy and the increased prices and all that stuff that's going on. It would help ease the burden on families by utilizing these funds to help buy the school supplies at the beginning of the year and not charge the athletic fees. So when we originally did plan the model under ESSER, that was included for the 2 years.
ESSER funds are only good for a year or two, maybe.
ESSER 2, it was for 2 or 3 years. ESSER 3 is another year beyond.
So at least 50 to 70% of the people can afford the athletic fees. Why wouldn't we not charge them? Because we've never turned anybody away ever in all my years. If they don't have money, they get to play.
Mhm.
They get to participate in band. We've never turned anybody away for any reason. People can come in and participate for no cost.
Mhm.
And yet, I would guess Tim Burke could tell us well over half of the families and stuff. It's $200, which is a steal beyond belief for what a child gets out of that. Whether it's FFA or basketball or whatever sport, it's so cheap. And if they play 3 sports or they have multiple kids in the same family, they only pay a cap.
Mhm.
And so, again, if we're talking about not being able to fund certain positions, then that's revenue we have to take. We have to put the fees back in and still let the students participate like they've always participated.
Well, you could do that. The board would have to vote on increasing and changing those fees.
Okay.
And we'd also have to find out if they're already out in print, which I think probably a lot of that is, but we can find that out. I know the school supplies for elementary. I think that information has been pushed out, or at least is prepped to push out for next year already, because we're just already at that date where we're informing parents of what's going on.
This is Melissa Daly again. I'm wondering if we should have a list of items to revisit later, at the end of the presentation. So now this would be number 2, the ESSER funds, the 104.4 to athletic fees.
Mhm. Yep, that's fine. Do you want to move to the next one?
Nikki, this is Kim. I had a quick question on the athletic fees and stuff. Did we get any information on participation, if that went up or down compared to like a non-COVID year?
No, I didn't. I forgot about that one.
No problem, thanks.
Okay, we already did move. So these were some more questions that were directly asked of me. The first one, are we ripping? We are adjusting staff to align with our decreased enrollment. At this time, we anticipate minimal, if any, reductions in force due to retirements, resignation, and temporary positions. So are there any questions about that statement? We have enough openings right now that we pretty much can cover any of those adjustments below. So what adjustments are being made? 22.67 licensed staff, 4 classified positions, 2 assistant principals, assistant superintendent, and director of strategic partnerships are not in the budget. I was also asked what are legal fees to date. So that's the current year, $155,874. Oops. We were almost there. And the other direct question I was asked are what are the salaries for Dr. Phillips and Dr. Morlock? Based on the board packet that came out, Dr. Phillips is at 180, Joe's was 175. And then there's some trigger red language in the contract that could result in $5,000 more in salary for Dr. Phillips. And that's related to ADMR numbers Are there any questions on those statements? Okay. These are other changes throughout the budget. Like I said earlier, everything is pretty much flat. I made a little adjustment in utilities based on trends of those, making sure we have enough in the buckets to pay our power, water, all that good stuff. But these are other areas I had to look at. And we spoke about this before as far as what's the risk out there with the several lawsuits we have hanging on. Prior to, we had 35,000 budgeted in legal. I bumped it up to 350. So there's 315,000 there that I increased that line. Liability insurance, that's our just regular property insurance, increased by 70,000. Transportation increase. We have a new transportation company. Either going with them or going with the old company, there would have been an increase because it'd been 15 years with the prior company. So that needed to adjust for the new contract. And just another note, I think I mentioned before, out of the general fund, Greg's being moved out of the general fund over to the bond fund. So that provides a little space in there, which is why.
Nikki, can you say that again really fast? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. From the top or about Greg?
Greg.
Okay, so Greg's position, he was 0.5 in the bond fund and 0.5 in the general fund. So we moved him over 100% to the bond fund as the bond manager. So that left like the 0.5 that he was in communications there to put towards this new communications position. Or the separate communication position, I would say. So the current communications posting is 0.5 more than what we had previously based on this movement. In the budget, I have maintained buffer positions in case of enrollment bubbles. So what that means is at the high school level, at the middle school level, at the elementary level, I build in like 1 FTE per level. Because what always happens is we start the school year, we'll have a class that a building that 5th grade blows up and we have 40 kids in a class. So there may be, we always build that in case there's a bubble that we have to adjust and plug staff. But we won't know that yet. And we usually need to make those adjustments a little bit later in the year, in the fall, when we have a better idea what's going on. And the other increase in the budget that wouldn't be there normally is the payoff of the prior superintendent's contract, which is about 136,000 because we need to continue to pay that through June or through November. Sorry, I'm looking forward to June, obviously. Are there any questions about those pieces? Why they're there? Okay, June, go to the next one. So this is our calendar. So as you can see on the 24th, that's today. Typically, this would be our second official budget committee meeting where we'd approve the budget, set tax levies, and that was the other form that we sent out to just give the language for those different pieces. If we don't get to that place tonight, we'll schedule a meeting for next Tuesday. We'll just add a third budget committee meeting and we'll do that on Tuesday. And we can figure out how much time we think we might need to do that. And the reason we have to make it happen next Tuesday is there's a certain amount of posting time. I have to put it in the paper prior to that hearing on June 14th. It has to be in there over 5 days prior to that meeting. So we need a little time to be able to make that happen. I put to the next one. And so now there's one other thing that I did put in here. There was also a question around negotiations, just updating everybody where we are. And we talked a little bit about it in the past, but we will be negotiating with all groups. License has not really started yet. We have some dates out there that we're trying to calendar to start that discussion. Classified was a limited reopener. We're pretty much we've made it through most of the conversations with them because it's much more limited. It's just based on money, which mirrors other groups. And then some language in different articles that we talk about just to clean up. We usually identify places that we've had issues with in like the prior year or two and just work out whatever the problem is and get those updated. So classified is is pretty well taken care of. And then following that, we have our three unrepresented groups. So we'd have the director MOU, we'd have the principal MOU, and the CSPT. That none of those are negotiated yet, and they typically follow along the same lines as what gets negotiated with the license group. So all of those are unfinished. I do have in the budget, I did build into the budget 1%. So I have that piece in there. We do know that typically you don't settle at 1%, but I needed to put, I felt like I needed to put the base in there. So that is in there. That and a little bit of an increase to the insurance cap. But anything beyond that, again, as I mentioned before, is 850,000 per percentage. So when we're talking about all these other positions, we need to keep that in mind as far as what we continue to adjust in the general fund, what we can try to supplement through ESSER funds, hoping that there's an enrollment change, or hoping that we can off ramp a bit and make some more adjustments in the following years or two to keep compensating for that. But that's where we are. Are there any other questions maybe that I forgot? I had a couple phone calls, but I tried to get them all included here.
I have a question about, so is my understanding about the board secretary that, so we're not really filling that spot that Shanna would be like the board secretary. Normally the superintendent's secretary is the board secretary.
Yeah,
So-
that's typically what we can do with that. That hasn't been finalized as far as I know. It's all been talked about.
Okay.
So there would be that board secretary piece out there as well in the budget that could be worked with. Yeah. But that was also kind of left in that let the superintendent decide bucket for sure.
Okay.
I had some specific questions about the budget as I was going through it. What's the current number of students enrolled in COA? When I looked at it, it looked like it was 28 in the board packet, but I wasn't sure if that was actually accurate. Not board packet, budget committee packet.
Let's see if I can find that spreadsheet real quick. So right now under COA, K through 5 is 84, 6 through 8 is 66. 9 through 12, which isn't technically COA, it is 9 through 12 online learning, is about 95.
Kat, this is Kim. There was a budget book that was sent out today. It does have updated numbers on there compared to the last one we looked at.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we did update the enrollment tab, so those calculations per school will be adjusted.
Okay, so I had a quick question. Got it. So you're right, 245. So COA is getting, it looks like, just over 2 more licensed staff. And Catalyst is losing 2 licensed staff. Correct?
Well, when you look at that piece, you think about where, or what I have to remind people are, when we did that budget for the current year, we were back in February, March, putting those numbers in. So what we budgeted for COA is not what we've been running with. We've been staffed at higher than that. So we're actually already increased in COA currently. And so that you're still looking at budgeted staffing for the current year. When we roll into the following year, then you'll see those actual numbers come in with the actual spending in that area. Because we are spending a fair more amount in there, because we had enrollment increased at COA where we pulled staff from the buildings, transferred them to COA. So a lot of that was budgeted in buildings, but is actually switching sites. So you'll see that movement when the actual numbers come in, if that makes sense.
I think it makes sense.
It's like we budgeted before we knew we had to move all that staff around. So that number is lower as far as staffing than what we're actually doing, because we had to shift those staff to follow where the students went.
Right. So you're saying that 2021-22, 1.75 licensed staff was what we budgeted, but that's not what it's currently running at.
Correct. We're at like 3 or 3.5, something like that in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you then tell me for Catalyst, where we budgeted 6, what are we currently running at?
Oops, that's not the Catalyst number. Hold on just a second. How many spreadsheets can one person have open? Okay, it looks like Catalyst. 21-22, we're currently running at about 7.7.
So I guess my larger concern is we're looking at a significant change in FTE, which I know we're doing shifts everywhere, but that seems a disproportionate amount.
That is going to, there's other pieces to that. So part of that is that the K-5 COA is going to it's going to move to Ewing Young. So they're going to oversee that grade, that group, the K-5. The 6 through 8 will move to CV. Currently, that's where those numbers are reported, just as far as an attendance piece of it. And also we are looking at having the 9-12 online piece at the Springbrook building work with the flexible learning at the high school. So those two programs run very similar. So we're going to have them work together and be more efficient with that, where some of those FTE adjustments we can do because we are streamlining those programs.
Okay, can I summarize what I think I heard?
Sure.
Catalyst and COA are working closely together. They're being housed at Edwards and Chehalis Valley, and also that they will be working with Catalyst. The high school portion of COA will be working with Catalyst. So we will see COA and Catalyst teacher kind of intermixing, which is not the best way to say that, but it is possible some of your COA teachers will also do a Catalyst class. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, kind of. So the Ewing Young, I think you said Naval Rush, but Ewing Young is a smaller school, so Brian will be able to see that K-5 staff and that program. And then also the 6 through 8 was at Chehalis Valley, like you're saying, and the same thing. Then that way, those administrators will evaluate and work with those licensed staff. And then you're left with at Springbrook, the actual Catalyst program that it originated with, and then the 9 through 12 online piece of that will work with the high school as well. I see that probably as working with both of them. I mean, the details of that are still being worked out as far as the flow and the efficiency and those pieces.
But you're talking pure administratively. You're not talking as in teaching a class. So I guess my larger concern is that you're saying Catalyst has about 7 licensed staff right now, and they're going down to 4.
Mm-hmm.
That to me seems a disproportionate cut compared to some of the other places.
Yeah, I mean, we based it on numbers. So Catalyst partially over time, because it's a program that adjusts to its population. So it has several different offerings. We've added staff over time for different pockets of needs. But when you get down to the 25-to-1 ratio, that FTE matches. And we've had this same kind of discussion across the board. Because we've had, 5 years, so 17, 18, there were all the cuts. And then I think we had one normal year, and then we started the COVID piece. So all of those years, if we had declining enrollment, we didn't adjust staff. It was our philosophy at the time that we didn't want to cause more chaos by reducing staff and all this because everything else was going on. So really what we did at this point in time and said, these are our enrollment, these are our kids, these are our enrollment numbers, and looked at the 25-to-1 ratio and resized staff, resized the resources to meet those needs. So you're not going to be able to have a direct correlation of 15% of kids to 15% of staff, because the last several years has been, you can't compare the apples to apples. It's been chaotic. You could probably maybe look at this year and go back to, I don't know, look at some trends from 15, 16 and go that far back. But at this point in time, it's really about what do we have today in students and numbers, and what do we have, how much staff do we need to support that? Are there any other questions?
Yeah, this is Kim. I do have a question on the budget book on page 15, the ending fund balance for 2021. Towards the bottom. Why is that so high compared to other years?
Because over the years we've been building it up. What was that?
It's right at the bottom of the page where you have like total revenue and the ending fund balance portion. So the very bottom of each of that page. I think it.
Right. I'm going to pull the document up real quick. It looks like I closed it at some point in time. Hold on 1 second.
The fund summaries.
Kim, are you talking about the 138 million in 2021?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think, the bond, yeah?
Yeah,
'Cause if
that
you
is the
look,
bond.
that fund, excuse me, that line 410 is the bond, correct?
Yes, that's for, yeah.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, and then on the 100 fund above that, it's negative 33 million.
What page are you on?
Page 15.
15.
It says page 8 at the bottom.
Okay. There's a typo in there. I'm not seeing a negative anything.
It's got parentheses around it.
Oh, and that prior, oh, that's those are prior final numbers. So I'd have to go, that probably a formula problem. Because that should be, actually, I have that in another presentation. Pull that up real quick. It's so quiet in here. I just know what, because I have all the years lined up. I just have to find it's right here. We've been increasing from each year.
If I'm looking at that, that's because the expenditures are sitting at 96 million, right?
Yeah,
If
so
we're
it
looking at,
right, it came over, oh, here it is. So for, so 2021, the ending fund balance, well, that came in at like 9.3. For 1920, it was 9.3 million, 9.341. For 1819, 7.586. For 1718, 2.473. So it's been increasing. So there's a formula issue with that that I need to correct, but for what you're looking at, and that would have been your 18, 19. Yeah, that would have been about 7 million.
Okay. All right.
Nikki, I have a question. What is the ending fund balance for the next year? Projected ending fund balance?
I believe I have that in here at about 7.5 going into next year. That's what I budgeted. Yeah, I'll double check that though. Doing that off the top of my head.
And what is the board policy? How much do we need to keep in?
I'm just under 4 million. So it's the 7% split between the appropriated and the unappropriated. And it ends up being about just under the $4 million. Yeah. Just trying to find that one specific question for you. I look at for that. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I have some more. Sorry.
No, go for it. Well, it's 7.2 million. Sorry, Rebecca.
Thank you, Nikki. On page 20 with the revenues, I was just wondering if you can kind of explain on 1960, what is that?
Recovery from prior year expenditures. So what comes into there are refunds from prior years, flex, so unspent flex money that comes back to the employer, sometimes refunds from insurance companies, just depending. So it's just kind of a bucket for those random things that sometimes we get rebates or refunds back at the end of the year, but they're really from a prior year. So it just gets dumped into that bucket.
Is there any reason why we're seeing that jump from like 6,000 this year to next year? We're thinking 200,000?
Well, yeah, currently in 21, 22, we've had some stuff come in through our American Fidelity, through some of our insurance pieces that I expect would continue from year to year. So I bumped that up to reflect that.
Okay. And then on page 21, expenditures with reserves, proposing 2.6 million on there.
Right, so 2.6 is the unallocated, and the allocated would be in the line above it under other. So it's that contingency number that's just split in two different types of accounts.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I was looking over the numbers for the schools, and it doesn't look like there's anything for equipment for any school.
Typically, equipment type purchases are like building based, so they would come more out of like the custodial maintenance, those types of funds. Computer items, those sorts of things tend to come through technology and those areas, so they don't have those individual items in their building budgets. They're picked up elsewhere, kind of in a district-wide type of budget.
Gotcha. And then when we have like the line for services, what falls under that bucket? Because it seems like there's been some pretty wild swings up and down on there. What falls into that?
So 300s is kind of the overarching name is purchase services. So probably why it's fluctuating when you look at the last few years is one of the big chunks in it are substitutes. So when we weren't in school, we wouldn't be paying a lot of substitutes. Other things that are under 300s would be utilities, repair services, Yeah, anything that's considered contracted. So even if it's like somebody coming and doing staff development, we pay them under a 300 object. So there's a wide range. Utilities, did I already say utilities? Yeah, so all the utilities and stuff would be under there. So it's really, it really varies between what function. So like the maintenance, custodial would have all your utilities under it. But your instruction lines are typically, the bulk of that is going to be your substitute lines.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, I have a little bit of a list. On page 53 with COA, their supplies are going up significantly based on the previous years to next year. What is driving that like $100,000 increase?
Right, that is curriculum. So we've spent a lot, and we're actually looking into that a bit more and trying to go out and get demos for different types of curriculum or different companies. But it's a huge cost. And as we kept adding students, we would just get another invoice for more and more and more. So I did up that number a bit to try to compensate for that piece of it. But we are in contact with companies to try to evaluate that and have some consistency across those programs. So if we could be using the same software between our flex learning at the high school and our online piece at the high school online via Catalyst, we want to have the continuity between all those programs. So right now we are going through those and trying to come up something that is that we can work with across the board, and also be at a better cost, do our shopping there. So I did bump that up because this year we're spending a lot of money there and we need more capacity there.
Gotcha. Looking at, sorry, if anybody else has questions, feel free to jump in. I was looking at page 71 under administration. And it looks like on the services portion of it, that's been like bumped up significantly.
So let me go there. I suspect it's one of those things that we were talking about as far as legal fees. I'm trying to get down to my administration page. Somebody should make this book shorter. You said about page 77.
71.
Okay. Yeah, so 226 up to 516, 3. Yeah, that's where that legal increase would be.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then on page 85, the 4,500 account. What is in that?
Those are our different ESSER funds.
Gotcha.
In the current year, we budgeted the full amounts. We're spending some of that down this year, but we don't have those final numbers yet. So we just budgeted that as a placeholder in the next year, partially because we typically, and we already have, we'll receive another grant or two that we're not aware of, surprise grants. So we need a little bit of capacity in those grant funds in order to accept those funds and spend them. So I do build in a little bit of extra space under those grants so we can do that. and utilize those funds as soon as we can.
Gotcha. Okay. And on page 108, there's some totals at the bottom. And I was just curious as to what, is that just through all the different 200 funds, or what comes out to be those numbers at the bottom?
Actually, that's just a couple, that's a sub fund. So you can, that's part of the 200 funds. You can ignore that. We really don't need that in this presentation because it excludes, sorry, it was a subtotal for some of them. It excludes our SIA fund, our Measure 98 fund, some of those bigger ones that we have to report separately. That's kind of a subtotal of all our smaller ones that we don't have to report separately or have in a separate fund per ODE. So that's a partial number. It's not, it's probably not helpful. We could take that one out. It's helpful in my pre stuff, but not helpful here.
Gotcha. And then, sorry guys, last question I had was on Nutrition Services Fund. That is on page 110. So the proposal for next year is, pretty similar to this year. And this year we had funding coming in to provide lunches for everybody. What is it looking like for next year? And are we going to have everyone be paying for lunch and expecting the same participation, or what are we looking at?
Actually, when Shiloh built this budget, he looked at all of those pieces. He's done very well in the last few years, building up that ending fund balance and aligning kitchen. So I think he did look at all those pieces, and we did get a grace year. We were going to lose one of our schools off of the CEP program, but we did get a grace year. So we have a little bit more help in that area. We will probably have to adjust more going into the following year.
Thank you for all those questions, Kim. I do think we want to look at our time. We're at 6:42 and we do need to end at 7 tonight. We have 2 things that are still on our docket that we were in discussion about and we moved on. Melissa, do you want to remind us of what those are, please?
Yes, looking through all my papers here. The first one would be to revisit adding an assistant superintendent position. The second one is in some way reallocating the $104,400 of athletic fees to something else.
If I remember right, it was talking about using ESSER funds for those athletic fees. Is that correct, Nikki?
Yeah, currently that's where we're paying for them out of ESSER funds. Correct.
And so the proposal was to instead use those funds for something else. Dave, that was you that was talking about that.
Yeah, I just, I guess just being around the school for a long time, it's, I think one thing Tim Burke, one of his greatest things he's done his whole career is, he never turned anybody away. I never had a student athlete ever not get to play. And yet a lot of families are fine. It's a really pretty low fee in comparison to what people pay for camps, AAU, club soccer, whatever you want to call it, dance, whatever they're doing. Our athletic fees are pretty low. And I've talked to, just helped run a state tennis tournament, talked to schools up and down, 5A and 6A, and almost all the schools do charge a fee. And again, we've never turned away students. And I think Mark Brown will continue that. And that's just not sports, that's band and FFA and drama, whatever the kids' activities are into.
And you're proposing to use that money for an assistant superintendent?
No, I just want to help the budget.
Pardon?
I just want to help the budget in a positive way.
I think the budget's balanced as presented.
Yeah, but this is something where we've always done it. We only went away from it because of COVID. And this is, our only real revenue source is students sitting in chairs. That's our product. That's our Nike tennis shoe. So, we have to work really hard to get our enrollment up, find out why people left in the last 4 years. And, little things like this do add up though. So it's a lot of money, $104,000. No, I don't.
It would be 75,000. The only reason it was 104 is because we allocated every student rather than making those adjustments. So when it goes back to the school, they'll make those adjustments so that the money that comes to the general fund will be a lot smaller than the 104. It'd be like the 75 because you're not charging all those whatever students that weren't able, that adjustment will be in there. Yeah. So it'd be about a $75,000 dollar revenue.
Well, I guess, a comparison real quick is 18, 20 years ago, we dropped middle school sports. Park and Rec picked it up. And it was $75,000 a year. That was a total budget for girls volleyball, boys football, boys and girls basketball, and boys and girls track. And, CV and Mountain View had literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids participate in those. And for $75,000, the school district made that decision to cut middle school sports. And I've always felt like that was not only a mistake, something we when we get back and get healthier to bring back, because it's not just sports, those are all the other activities those kids get to do. And there's more now than there's ever been. I mean, Newberg has more things offered, or as many as any school in the state. And so Rebecca, to answer your question, that's, revenue, $75,000 to me is a ton of money.
So Dave, do you have a proposal for an amendment?
Yeah, I would just say that, to go back to what we did pre-COVID, and then I'm 100% sure, I can double check for you, but Mark Brown will continue on as good as Tim Burke did to take care of every student. So I would amend that we go back to pre-COVID and charge the fees and allow them to make the decisions on kids who can't afford the fees.
Are you including the 45,000 for school supplies?
No, I was just going athletic fees.
Okay, does that impact that 75? Or is the 45? The 45,000 for elementary school supplies is separate, so it's necessary.
it's
Okay,
separate.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
And Judy has her hand up. I don't know if that's.
Sorry, trying to get my hand down and turn on the microphone. And if I remember correctly, we didn't know if there was a greater utilization of students going into the sports when there wasn't a cost, correct? So we don't know if it really made an impact. I guess my thought would be, from a parent perspective, is if you've gone to no costs, that you work your way back to it. But I think we need to know, did taking away the barrier of not having to pay those fees, did it have an impact?
Overall participation in sports is down in the state. Probably a lot of that has to do with a lot of kids disengaged from school, not being there, being online, whatever. So we'll see how that plays out coming back. But again, for all of our families who can afford to pay, they'll pay. And the ones that can't pay, they won't have to pay. So
I'd like a clarification on that. You're saying they don't have to pay, so they usually get a scholarship. Does that scholarship come from Booster Club?
No.
Where does that scholarship come from?
It's just not charged.
Just not charged. Okay.
Yeah, so if it's a $200 fee to say,
Isn't it taken out of parking or something else? It has to be covered by something.
like we covered it the last 2 years in our budget, because we just said we weren't going to charge.
No, but before the kids either worked it off or there was booster club money or parking funds. It just wasn't wiped off the books. There was some, I think it would deserve more looking into this issue before we make a decision on that we have facts and.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tim or Mark could easily do that.
I think there's two pieces to this. So as far as the change in the fee, that is separate really from where we need to get with the budget, because that decision could be made as far as voting the fee or not with other facts. If we do flip that, that just means that that revenue, the 75,000 would come into the general fund and build up an ending fund balance or go to the bottom line. So I don't think that that particular decision has to be made right this second if we're looking for the other detail about participation and those other pieces. I know that admissions fees come into, sorry about that, into the student body fund. So a lot of those things get paid for out of those funds that go into athletics. So help covering students or athletes that can't afford. A lot of those pieces come out of that. So it isn't the general fund that stays over in the student body funds. It covers a lot of those. But I do think that that piece of it is not large enough where it should impact this particular document. But
We go back later and change it if that's what we find the right data.
right, because you can, the fee thing is separate. We can still accept revenue in.
Sure.
If that changes and then that, so, and that would just adjust what's left, say in the ESSER fund. And the ESSER fund goes over a couple of years. So as we know, we can utilize that and we'll have need for that over the couple of years. So in the bigger picture, all those pieces, yeah, it's okay to move
Sure.
without exactly defining that right this second is all I guess I'm trying to say.
Melissa, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, Nikki, I thought the ESSER funds had to be spent within a certain amount of time. Like, could they go into the general fund and be in the ending fund balance and just sit there?
No, we have to keep them out in a separate fund. So ESSER 2 can be spent through September of 23 and ESSER 3 can be spent through September of 24. So we kind of have these couple years that we don't have to be in a hurry to just try to spend that. We can use it. And when we originally started charging things to it, we were trying to utilize it as kind of, one-time purchases as much as possible. Covered some staffing in that because we didn't make cuts in prior years. But we do have, September of next year, the ESSER 2 would have to be spent, which won't be a problem. And ESSER 3 is another year out after that. So, and we can't just transfer into the general fund. All those funds have strings attached to them.
Jennifer, you had a quick question? Sorry, you had a question.
She's muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
Still.
Okay, here we go. And I have a question regarding on the individual school pages that were in that presentation, and it said average amount spent per student. There's two elementary schools in particular that are significantly higher than the other elementary schools. I'm curious as to how that number comes about.
So that number is a direct relation to students versus overall costs. And I suspect that you're looking at a couple of the smaller schools.
Joanna and Union Young.
So when you have the smaller schools, when you say have, one class per grade, even if the ratio says you should go smaller, you can't have a 0.75 teacher or a 0.5 teacher for a classroom. They already have some blends in there. And then like support staff as well. The allocation maybe should be a 0.5 secretarial position, but you can't cover the front desk for only half of the day. So some of those smaller schools, just because of the need and the ratio, they're going to cost more per student because you have to provide those same services.
In the past too, Nikki, wasn't it? Some schools, it's maybe have a higher concentration of senior teachers.
Yeah.
And so their pay is higher, and then that is that still true?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that really depends on the makeup, especially too in your smaller schools, because if you do have your upper end teachers, that piece is going to be inflated compared to other buildings where we might have a lot more turnover.
So has the district ever, I know I've been in the district for years and years and years as far as a parent, has the district ever looked at when we have enrollment down, and say one school is top heavy on third grade and the other school, have we ever moved students from school to school in order to meet an appropriate ratio of student to staff from school to school?
I'm not aware of that, but I'm being told that maybe like 1 year we did that. It typically doesn't make families happy because they like to be in their home school. So it's something that's avoided. But it sounds like that it was tried at least 1 year.
Okay.
So we are at 6:55. That leaves us 5 minutes. We still have the topic of assistant superintendent. And there were many questions still around that not answered. My proposal would be that we go ahead and table that discussion for a meeting next Tuesday, and that we could then go ahead and approve the budget and tax levies rate next Tuesday. Thoughts?
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I support that. I think it'd also give Dr. Phillips time to maybe a few days to at least look over it and think about what he's going to need moving forward as far as support.
That would make some sense for him to weigh in on that. I mean, as it stands, the budget committee typically doesn't make those types of staffing positions. It is up to leadership to do that. So I would leave that there.
So we meet next Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, we can, if that's what we're agreeing here. When we
Yes,
go to the
yeah.
board meeting, then you can go through the process of officially adding that to the calendar.
Sure.
Yeah, so that'll require a motion from somebody to go ahead and move that we add another budget committee meeting on Tuesday, May 31st at 7 p.m. Does anyone have a motion?
Can I ask a question? How long are you
Yeah.
thinking? 7 to 8, or do we want to do a 6 to 7? I mean, how much time you're thinking you want to slate with that?
Schedule, say 90 minutes. I think the
I
people with
know.
the family should vote in quicker.
Yeah, 6 to 7:30.
Something like that.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we table discussions related to budget to schedule a new meeting for, what is the date again? Sorry.
31st.
May 31st, from 6 to 7:30 to continue discussion on the topics that have been tabled at this time.
Was that Raquel?
And to approve.
Yes.
That was
Thank
Raquel,
you.
yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So Judy, that was Raquel who made the motion. Do we have a second?
I second, and that was Renee.
Renee seconded the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Abstaining? Motion passed that we will go ahead and add another budget committee meeting, May 31st, starting at 6 p.m., ending around 7:30 p.m. At that meeting, we will be approving the budget, having discussion on final approval of the budget and our tax rate levies. I hereby adjourn our budget committee meeting at 6:58.
Perfect, thank
Thank you
you.
very
Thank
much.
you, Kat,
you.
and all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Welcome,
Okay,
David.
Hello,
Thank you.
Greg.
I will
How y'all doing?
start doing all right. I will start the interpretation for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it should be good to go, and hopefully Nancy will be joining us soon.
What time is the main meeting going to start?
It should start in just a minute, Maddie. They just finished the budget meeting and they're transitioning the computer that's being used in the boardroom. So it should get started soon.
Okay.
Thanks for being here. And welcome, Nancy. Thanks for being here as well. The interpretation's already started, so you should be good to go. Just to let everyone know, the board meeting will be starting shortly. There was a budget committee meeting prior to this, and so they are switching the computer that is running the Zoom meeting in the boardroom. Just letting everyone know that the board meeting will be starting shortly. They finished up a budget meeting prior to this and are switching the computer for where the boardroom is.
For those of you who have not given me your
Great, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, call this Newberg School Board District meeting for May 24th to order. First thing we do is the pledge of allegiance, Director DeHart.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kind of a tough one, you guys. Today in Uvalde, Texas, school shooting with 18 students and one teacher. We've only done this a couple of times in our board meetings. I know not everybody's a praying person. I know some people are, but also in Yamhill Carlton School District, 2 students have passed away by suicide in the last week. It's a neighboring school district that a lot of us probably have friends or ties to. So whether you're a praying person or not, we can do a moment of silence. So it won't be too long, but let's just have a moment of silence for all those families and people. All right. Thank you for doing that. In your thoughts or your prayers, whatever, there's the families, the students, the parents, the staff, law enforcement, fire, the community. I can't imagine what it must be like. So again, all those people are part of the heartache and stuff. So just a tough one. So anyway, moving on with our business, it doesn't seem quite as dramatic as that. But there, review the agenda. Wanted to, before we pass, I'm not going to read everything on there tonight, but I did want to reach out or just accept licensed teacher retirements from Teresa Putnam, teacher, Joanne Austin Elementary School. Thank you, Teresa. And to one of our longest tenured teachers in the district ever, probably one of the best teachers we've ever had is Vicki Acosta, teacher at Edwards Elementary School. She's an amazing person, parent, mom, volunteered a bazillion hours in the school district. So 2 people be missed, a lot. The rest of these are, leave of absence and things like that. So I want to also accept the administrator resignations of Casey Petrie, principal at Shannon Valley Middle School, Cassandra Thronstead, administrator of special assignment, and so recognizing them, and we will need to get a motion on that.
We're not there yet.
We have to do public comments.
Public comments, student rep comments, union comments, and consent.
Oh, I went right by that. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little just holding up the shootings really kind of show me. Sorry. So Lisa, are you ready to go for public comments?
Yes, I am. Got timer, got water, got paper. I'm here. So tonight, the first one is from Brianna Dodson. Good evening to the board. I wanted to address the board today with major concerns circling around all the political signs in the schools. I've watched last year the meetings and the votes, and it was voted to ban BLM and gay pride items from the school. I've emailed numerous times to both Brian and Dave with not even a response back. I was a huge advocate for the vote no on the recall, but now I feel like I'm being ignored along with many other parents who are not happy. Black Lives Matter signs are all over the middle school. Gay pride flags are hanging in windows. It's been brought to my attention that the 2 counselors at CVMS are encouraging kids to try to be gay, and that's in quotes. I am at the point I don't feel that my kids are getting a safe and educational experience. We, along with others who are considering pulling our kids from the school district for this overstretched power. My other option is to literally interview every single person that would have contact with my children and decide if they are a positive educator in their lives or if they are out for an alternative motive. This board needs to do more. You have already started the change away from this liberal agenda, but now you just seem to have stopped and ignored. You were voted in for a reason. You were kept from a recall for a reason. Make this happen or face losing more parents like me pulling our kids out of this toxic environment. This one is from Matt Jordan. It says, greetings, please choose Steve Phillips to be the next Newberg School District Superintendent. I believe Steve will stand up and support education over indoctrination. Just so you know, what we're reading is everything we received from the 10th. I mean, the ones from Tuesday, when your last meeting was, to current. So that was one that we had received prior to having announced a decision to offer the position to Dr. Phillips, which is the next one as well. Hello, I'm asking the school board to please vote yes for Stephen Phillips as Newberg Dundee School Superintendent. As at the candidate forums, he listened carefully, answered thoughtfully the questions asked him. I find his credentials impressive, and I believe he would guide the schools in the way they should go, making the essentials for a good education top priority. Thank you for your consideration, Carrie Wolf. I wish to express my appreciation for the board's choice to select Dr. Phillips. I realize that there was significant opposition, and I'm proud that the board stayed with its decision to select the best candidate despite this dissension. Please pass on to Dr. Phillips that as a Newberg resident, I will continue to support him as we welcome him to our community. I hope to be physically present when we greet him for his first day on the job. Both the board and Dr. Phillips will be in my prayers. Sincerely, Dr. Dan Carpenter. Since July 2021, the board majority of Chair Brown, Vice Chair Shannon, Directors Powell and DeHart have broken public policy and public trust. This began at the July 13th meeting in which Director Shannon proposed that the board adopt one new policy and rescind two existing policies. According to the board policy BCF, proposals to adopt or revise policies must be scheduled on the agenda meetings in advance so that the public can know what the board proposes to do. Following the board meeting on July 13th, the board has received complaints and requests for action from staff, students, and members of the public. The board majority has repeatedly failed to direct their feedback through the appropriate process in violation of policies BBF and BBAA. On August 10th, the board majority proposed a resolution to amend board action during a board meeting by not providing adequate public notice of this amendment and preventing discussion. The board majority violated board policies BBF and BD/BDA. At the same meeting, these members failed to provide Director Piros with accommodations for her well-documented disability, violating policies BD/BDA and BDDC required by the Americans with Disabilities Act. Before a board meeting held on August 24th, the board majority met privately in a forum to discuss hiring an attorney. These board members then entered into a contract with an attorney outside of a public meeting, violating both Oregon Public Meetings Law and policy BBAA. These are only a few examples of repeated violations and disregarded the Newberg School Board policies and public meetings law. A more detailed complaint has been submitted to the board and the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. In bringing these complaints forward, we hope that the board majority will begin to adhere to board policy to protect students, staff, and the school district, submitted by Directors Piros and Penner. Dear School Board, I'm deeply concerned about the current state of our school district. You continue to make decisions that are causing devastating destruction and mayhem in our schools and communities. It is hard to watch good teachers and students leave the district because the board majority is making decisions that show a lack of respect or concern for the people most impacted. Over the past 8 months, I have either attended school board meetings or watched a recording, with each meeting getting progressively worse. I have heard comments that include referencing low graduation rates for immigrants/ESL students as expected rather than a challenge, racist statements regarding Black Lives Matters, and homophobic statements regarding LGBTQIA+ students. I witnessed the unjust firing of a great superintendent and participated in the community meet and greets in search of a new superintendent. The one thing I have not witnessed would be actions that line up with the stated board goals on the district's homepage. Goals, exclamation point. I think that is a good place to start. Maybe, just maybe, we can agree goals keep us focused. Goals motivate and move us from mediocre achievement to success. Goal 1 on the district homepage, commit to becoming an anti-racism board. I think it's safe to say our board majority is unable or unwilling to work on this goal. I think, if anything, the majority appears to be working to eliminate this goal. You seem to have an aversion to conversation about race, diversity, equity, and inclusion, so much so that you could not vote on a Better Together initiative offering support to our teachers and students. Really? Question mark. You cannot vote on that inclusive statement. The board majority will not budge. The hiring of a superintendent who was removed from the Beaverton School District for a controversial retreat deemed racist is a strong indication you have no intention of working toward the goals of being an anti-racism board. Beaverton felt the actions of our new superintendent did not align with their district. It appears that the behavior does align with our district, but only by majority vote. I'm at a loss of words regarding this decision, and it's absolutely sobering to think 50% of our community voted to keep 2 of you seated, supporting your draconian ideology. And I am out of time. Oh, and by the way, that was, sorry, Judy Tokstad. Dear Newberg School Board and Dr. Phillips, I am the daughter of immigrant parents and have been connected with immigrant families from around the world since childhood. In Newberg, I've been involved with immigrant students, families, and staff on a daily basis for over 20 years. From working together in all of our schools in our district, I can unequivocally say that immigrant families are the stable families in our community, full of gracious courtesy, warmth, grit, and accomplishment. Persons from immigrant families make up over 10% of our district and over 20% of our students. Our ODE profiles note that our students speak 37 languages. There's an exclamation point there. Over 20% of the Newberg Dundee community in general comes from immigrant families. These persons have enriched our area economically and culturally beyond measure. Again, an exclamation point. This happened regardless of anyone's status. No human is illegal. The divine do not ask for documentation. Another exclamation point. When Dr. Phillips stands by his destructive rhetoric against immigrants, and most of the school board members validate the stance by choosing him, it is an outright assault on our immigrant students, families, and staff, and on the very fabric of the Newberg community that prides itself on living out the teachings of our faith. I invite you to reflect on the profound pain this causes to persons from immigrant families and to their classmates, colleagues, and neighbors. It is palpable, exclamation point. We see it daily in each other's ears, hear it in our voices, feel it around us. I invite you to consider the positive possibilities of mindful, upbuilding dialogue and action. May you discover and progress along paths of healing and reconciliation with our immigrant community. Sincerely, Ruth Schoenholz, E.L. Edwards. And that is the last of our comments for tonight.
All right, thanks, Lisa. All right, we are ready for student rep comments. Roland and Maddie, are you guys ready?
I can go real fast. First, I would like to say our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody affected. It's a terrible thing that happened in Texas, and we have our hearts with everybody who's been affected by it. On a slightly positive note, we have graduation coming up, so big congrats to our seniors. And COVID has made the past few years crazy, but everyone who has persevered is amazing, and it's a great thing to see an in-person graduation again. And then the next thing is newly elected ASB student council members. We had those announced today, so congratulations to everybody as well. And then finally, congratulations and welcome to a new superintendent. Thank you.
Thanks, Roland. Maddie, you ready?
Yeah. You can hear me, right? Sometimes it like flags. But I wanted to say sorry that I've missed so many meetings. I've been really busy with track, but we just had state and it was really fun. And we had a lot of people from our team qualify, which was really cool. I didn't qualify, but I still went. And it was at U of O, which was really cool because it's a really nice track. So that was awesome, and I'm excited to be done and just have the rest of the year. But we have Rage in the Cage coming up, school dance. It's our last school dance. It's on the seniors' last day, June 3rd. So we're looking forward to that. I think it's $5 to come. But yeah, it's like you wear all white and we're gonna have like glow in the dark paint and it's gonna be really fun. So yeah.
All right, thank you guys very much. Sure appreciate you guys. Rowan, you got to smile more though. You guys bring a lot of energy to the board. So thank you very much. All you guys do. Thank you. So we're moving on now. Our new section's been going on for a couple of meetings in a row. We have our union representative comments. And first one up, we have it listed as classified with Jen Esmond first tonight.
Hello, everybody. I don't have anything really prepared. I would just like to welcome Dr. Phillips to our school district. And a big shout out to all the staff that are working hard in these last few weeks of school. Anyone that knows or has been in a school lately, the last 3 weeks can be challenging. So if you have a chance, stop by, give a smile to a staff member. We are working hard to try to finish strong. And every day feels like a Monday right now. So just come by and cheer us all on, because we're trying to finish strong and looking to move forward and do the best that we can for our students and make sure they're supported and taken care of as they leave our site for 3 months. And that's all I'd like to say.
Thanks, Jen Esmond. Appreciate that. Can we go to Jennifer Snyder up there?
Hi, thank you so much. Just a big welcome to Dr. Phillips. I know we know some things, we don't know all things, and transition is always one of those things where there are some bumps in the road. But we're looking forward to working together and seeing what we can do with Newberg schools, with keeping our students at the focus of that. Again, the news that came out this afternoon about the school in Texas is one of those things that is very touching and heartfelt to all educators. There was a time when I was teaching 5th grade and we got put in lockdown at outdoor school. We didn't know what was happening. We were told we had to get kids into cabins. And I remember standing out in the middle of the camp and somebody said, "Aren't you going to go to a cabin?" I said, "Nope. If they're coming for my kids, they're coming to me first." And that is what staff does for students. We are here to protect our students and make sure they are safe. We do it each and every day. The end of the school year is never a slow downward spiral. It is always a ramp up before the end of the year. And things like this just really put in perspective the work that we do with our kids. Every staff member that is in the Newberg School District puts kids first. And I hope that is something that we as a district will continue to fight for, is putting our students first, knowing that we want what's best for them, knowing that we are there to protect them each and every day, and knowing that we are right there learning alongside them, because every day should be a learning day for everyone. So thank you for the time.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate that. So we're moving on to the consent agenda. I already kind of read through that. So if there's a motion for that, would be great.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
A second.
I also want to call out the resignations. There's some teachers and counselors on there who have been incredibly impactful in my children's lives, and I just want to say thank you.
You guys want me to read all those? I can do that.
Oh,
What's that?
we can read them.
I'll go ahead and read. Accepting licensed teacher leave of absence request. Jill LaFave, teacher, Mabel Russell Elementary School. Emily Russell, teacher, Shannon Valley Middle School. Kelly Simonson, teacher, Newberg High School. Michelle Terry, teacher, Newberg High School. Accepting licensed job share request between Sarah Duke and Tracy Valley, teachers at Antonio Crater Elementary School. Accepting temporary license teacher contract for Anna Millage, teacher at Shannon Valley Middle School. Accepting probationary administrative contracts for Emily Chadwick, principal, Antonio Crater Elementary School, and Lindsay Kopacek, assistant principal at Mountain View Middle School. Accepting licensed teacher resignations at the end of this school year. Sarah Barr, teacher, Shannon Valley Middle School, Mountain View Middle School. Eve Hannah, teacher, Shannon Valley Middle School. Jessica Hayes, teacher, Mountain View Middle School. Sarah Leonard's, counselor, Newberg High School. Amy Lutz, teacher, COA. Antonio Pena, teacher, Mountain View Middle School. Cheryl Segrin, counselor, Antonio Crater Elementary School. We already talked about Vicky Acosta and Teresa Putnam on their retirements. Have a blast, you guys. Accepting, we already talked about the administrators for principals Petrie and Bonstead. So all those in favor of that consent agenda, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0. All right, new business, potential action. Lisa, I think you're up on this, or Nikki's up first on that one for the budget committee calendar first.
And we spoke about this during our budget committee meeting. So we need a motion to add the meeting for next week. I think we agreed on 6 to 7:30 as a time frame.
I move that we add a meeting to the budget committee on May 31st from 6 to 7:30.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes 7-0. Thanks, Nikki. Nikki, is there any more we can do to help you for next Tuesday? I mean, those questions or anything?
No, not really, unless you have specific, it sounds like it's, you know, I can work with Dr. Phillips and maybe, yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk about it and back to the group if there's more questions that pop up between now and then, just trying to get them to Friday or early Monday so we can get something presented or written up.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Good job, Mike. All right. Next one up is more Lisa than me, but we have action item intern superintendent contract and then the superintendent contract. So Lisa, are you ready?
I'm ready. So I have two documents that I provided for you in your packet. The interim contract is to deal solely with the period of time between today, and the end of June. Originally, we had folded them all into one contract, but Dr. Phillips thought that it made more sense to put it into a separate agreement. And what we did is we literally just used the per diem rate that we used to calculate. Now, the one I do have to confess, okay, this is the danger of letting attorneys do math. I know, I tried. I actually did. I got the daily per diem rate. Nikki can verify. I got the per diem rate right. I counted the days wrong. So I did the hard part right, and I got the days wrong. So I called Dr. Phillips today. I explained my mathematical error, and we have adjusted the amount so that the contract that I'm going to actually ask you to approve has an amount in the total of, some of you may want to know this. It's about $700 less than what I had originally calculated. So the salary for that period of time is $19,385, which is a slightly different number than I gave you in the one that's in your packet. The only other pieces that we included in here are the ones that are absolutely essential, which is the mileage reimbursement for the travel we will do among the buildings. The cell phone that is going to be consistent with other administrators' cell phone. And then the issue of whether or not because it wasn't clear whether he would or would not have health insurance through Jewel in June. So if he does not have health insurance, then we will move forward, putting him on the district's health insurance program for the June insurance. But besides that, there aren't any other bells and whistles. All the other bells and whistles, which we will talk about, are in the next contract. I think we did include, because the TSA contribution was a portion of the compensation. I believe it's also included in this. I'll save the rest till we get to do it. Are there any questions about the interim agreement?
Yes, I have some questions.
Yes,
I
Director
wonder
Perez.
who were the people involved in this discussion? In the past, we've had a personnel committee work with the superintendent. I'm just interested in who was involved. And can you explain the per diem? What does that mean? Because is it based on what the $180,000?
So I'll answer the first question. I unfortunately missed your last board meeting.
I can answer that if you'd like me to, Lisa. At the last board meeting, the board made a motion that allowed board leadership to start contract negotiations with Dr. Phillips. That's why those people are involved.
Right.
So it was Director or Chair Brown and Vice Chair Shannon who negotiated with Dr. Phillips.
Director Piros, the other person in this playing in this pond was me. So I worked directly with board leadership in terms of engaging in negotiations with Dr. Phillips' representative, which was Randy Shield. And the per diem question. So I did do Randy and I did the conversations, but we both connected back. Like after every conversation, I forwarded the communication to Chair Brown. And I believe Randy did the same thing to Dr. Phillips. And as a result of that, we came up with the agreements that are here today. The per diem is calculated, Director Piros, on a 260-day work year. And so you took the 180,000 and you broke it down into what that would be per workday.
All right.
Which is $692, something like that.
And another question, we're not paying for moving charges, are we?
There was no request for moving expenses, and so no moving expenses were proposed or accepted into this contract.
And the TSA charges would be on top of the $19,000 and the $400 for the travel and the phone and possibly health insurance would be additional.
So and maybe it makes sense to kind of talk about how we arrived at some of those numbers and talk about the main contract. So I, working with Chair Brown, decided that the easiest way to engage in these negotiations was to work off of a contract you had already approved. So the contract we used as a starting point for this conversation was the previous superintendent contract that was in place. And there were a couple changes we had to make in some of the language that was a function of a statutory change that occurred this last legislative session. But in essence, we started working with that particular document. And so that was also the starting point. So when we exchanged a proposal with Dr. Phillips' representative, we included well, actually, we did not. Our first offer to Dr. Phillips did not include a TSA contribution. We ultimately included one because the prior superintendent also had a TSA contribution. And so we included that contribution in the offer we sent back. And as a result of it, we increased that slightly. So you originally had a contribution that was a total of about $5,000 on an annual basis under the prior superintendent's contract. And I believe under this one, the $500 gets us to $6,000. So there's a slight increase. The mileage stayed roughly the same. I think we increased it like $30 or $40 per month. to incorporate the higher expenses attributed to travel. The cell phone eventually changed to, instead of just calling out the district provided cell phone, it gave the superintendent the same option other administrators have on the cell phone. And so because that was the main contract we developed, we just used that same compensation structure when we created the interim agreement.
I have another question. What was the decision of the board? I can't remember of the pay range we agreed upon when we initially sent out the
brochure.
bids.
Yeah, the range of salary that we had in the brochure was 170 to 190.
Mhm. And currently, we're paying Dr. Joe Morlock $1,400 gross, as well as the additional fees. Is that correct?
We are still under the provision that was the buyout provision for Dr. Morlock's contract. So whatever Dr. Pierce, I don't know what the monthly gross is, but whatever the monthly was under his prior contract, he is still receiving, and he will receive until probably November or December, right in that ballpark.
Nikki covered that in the budget meeting.
Yeah.
The other piece I think is important to recognize that as we were having this conversation amongst ourselves, we were trying to be responsive and reflective to some of the financial concerns the district was facing. So the value of this contract is very similar to the contract you had with Dr. Morlock. It's about a $5,000 increase over what the salary he had when he left the district, which represents slightly less than a 3% increase to the overall. And there won't be any other increase to this compensation package until you get to the 23-24 year.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the proposed interim contract as presented.
I still have some points to make about this as well. I was shocked when I saw that price tag of $20,000 for 1 month's work. I am concerned. I understand. Thank you for the explanation. It's very helpful.
And can I tell you how many days it is? It's actually 28 days.
28?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
28 days.
So my concern is more for you, Dr. Phillips, and that this is a really, you're stepping into a contentious district, it's a divided district, and right out the gate, it's costing us $20,000 to have you for 1 month. That's not centering students. That's not responding to community. And I mean, it is what it is. You need to get paid. You're going to get paid. It's clearly going to pass. But I think it was a pretty big misstep in trying to build trust within this community and centering students first.
What would you have paid?
You don't want to know my answer.
No, I really do.
I wouldn't have hired him. I didn't vote for him.
No, I know.
I would not have paid this. I think we left, we had a highly skilled and respected superintendent that we paid less. We are getting a superintendent who comes with a lot of professional baggage and a lot of legal troubles, and we're paying more. And that's a concern. That's the decision. I'm just letting you know, it does not look good.
Do you believe that voicing that opinion in a public forum is helpful to the success?
Because there was a lot of people outraged by that number. And I think it's great that Lisa can explain it so we can, rationally understand why. However, like I said, it is a difficult step to start off on.
It's just his monthly salary.
Sure.
Just break it
Yeah,
down.
I get it.
He's not getting an extra $19,000
No, I
on
get,
top of
yeah,
everything.
he gets paid $20,000 a month. We get that. And I
Yeah.
think that's
And that's
difficult
only
for
a
our
little bit
EAs. I
more
think that's
than
difficult
what
to hear from our
Joe
teachers. I think it's
paid.
difficult to hear to our students. I think it's difficult when we're talking about charging families athletic fees of $200 to make a balanced budget, yet we're paying our superintendent $20,000 a month. That is important to be said in public. Will it change the vote? No, but it is absolutely
But it's
vital.
the
that
same,
is
it's almost
expressed.
identical to what Dr.
It
Joe
is
did.
not. It
Yes,
is.
it
It
is.
is
It's only
more.
a little bit
Plus the
more.
TSA is more.
Real quick,
6,000 more.
based on Joe Morlock's salary, how much would we have been paying for the interim contract?
Oh, you're asking the lawyer to do
Oh,
math
God.
again? Gosh.
None of it matters. I'm simply
I'm
stating for
telling you that
public
the total value,
record.
I think when we talked about it, and again, this is ballpark, okay? When you add the additional salary, you add the TSA and the travel, the slight increase in travel, I think we got to roughly $6,000 total for the year, above and beyond what you would have compensated Joe Morlock. I think that was kind of the number we had on the back of the envelope. Kind of.
I would say plus 315,000 extra in legal fees. And I would say an extra potential 5,000 if we pass the contract with the very random 100 student bonus. So it's actually more. We're looking at least
None of that is
11,000.
relative to his contract.
It's in its contract, so it's absolutely relevant.
Well,
It's not in the interim term contract.
Correct.
I think it's important to recognize that the compromise that we arrived at with it is a bit of an odd, but we were trying to be collaborative and try and think about ways that if there is an improvement in the district's financial package, because based on 100 additional students, you would generate some additional revenue. That the agreement was, if there was the ability to do that, that it made sense that some of that compensation, a very small piece of that those funds could go back into compensating the superintendent. And that's just, it's important for you to know what the rationale.
I have no
was.
doubt that Dr. Phillips will be very well compensated.
Call the question.
Oh, of course I do. Thank you for the reminder.
Are there any other questions before we take a vote tonight on this?
Don't say anything.
Okay, I think.
For you, it would be.
All right, do I have a motion on accepting this contract?
We have a motion and a second.
Oh, we do already have that motion. All right, please, we're in the middle of the motion. So we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
Aye.
Could you read them out?
Read what out?
Who voted aye?
Brian
Well, we should
Shannon,
do
Dave
the- we
Brown,
should do
Trevor
the
DeHart,
no's.
Renee Powell, and Raquel Peregrino voted yes on this contract. Is that good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
All those opposed?
All those opposed, please raise your right hand. Those opposed are Rebecca Pyros and Brandy Pinner. Motion passes 5-2.
So we now have the full 12-month contract for you to, and actually it's a 2-year contract. And again, this does have all of the same language. I did take out, there was a notice piece in the evaluation article that created an additional burden for the board. I've removed that and Dr. Phillips was willing to accept the removal of that. There still is language in here that talks about the completion of the evaluation. I think I've already gone through most of the terms of this and you've seen it before. This is Dr. Morlock's contract. If you have any specific questions.
I do.
Okay.
About the situation with the bonus, the $5,000 bonus, if we receive 100 more students, that seems awfully low to me. And I'm wondering if, according to projections for the budget, we're estimated to lose 100 students this next budget session. Does he lose money if we lose children? Just to,
No. The answer to your question is no, there is no loss of funds. There was a desire for a salary that was, because we did post a range that had the 190. We did not settle on that particular number because we had concerns about some of the financial standings of the district. We also know that we're having conversations with other employee groups. And so there was a recognition of that. And after talking with the director of finance, if you get 100 students, you're going to have slightly less than $1 million in additional revenue. And it seemed like, while it's not the perfect solution, and I wouldn't characterize it as a bonus, I wouldn't put those terms on it at all. It was a method of trying to tie the ability to pay to compensation for the employee in question.
Would it be a figure that then becomes his permanent salary? Or would it be in conjunction to each year's progress of student retention?
No, this literally is, it is a one-time only event. It is not written into the second year of this contract. It will only occur potentially once. It is based on the numbers you experience in your student enrollment as of December of this year. And if you do in fact lose 100 more students, it will not be paid out, right? So that $5,000 will not be part of that compensation package. It will be, yeah, just give me a second. It will be part of the go forward compensation. But in the second year of this contract, we've already negotiated what that increase will be for the second year. And the second year is based on what you also pay to your other administrative groups. So it's tied to what other administrators get.
And if
And
that
are
num-
there other districts that do this compensation?
Well, I did work with the school district that used this kind of mechanism in a collective bargaining agreement with their classified employees. I don't know that I've seen it in any superintendent's contract because most of them would not be open to the creative solution that we threw across the table.
and
We're
if
innovators.
and if that number is 99, then he gets nothing.
Nothing, has to be 100.
Got it.
What if
And
it's,
we've identified the specific date and it's the ODE data.
what if it's 100, say next year, and then the following year it drops 500, but it's only at 5,000 for that one time?
Yeah, then we still are paying the 185,000 and you lose the 500 kids. I would hope that would not be the case.
Sure.
But it could be. You're absolutely right, Director Penner. It could
I
be.
would be shocked if we gained students this coming year.
I think Dr.
Who knows,
Phillips
right?
knew
But-
it was a bit of a risk on his part. I don't know that he's anticipating that he's going to have $5,000 to spend in the spring.
Yeah, I think it's problematic when you start attaching compensation to enrollment because it leaves open the door for fudging, shall we say? And it also leaves open the door for other classified and union people to want that bump as well, which would be fair. And I'm also really concerned that it feels, it's concerning. It's concerning on a lot of levels. And I think the only way I would really ever support that is if it was also, if it was tied to enrollment, period. So if enrollment goes down, your wages go down. Enrollment goes up, it goes up.
Well, in terms of the fudging, I don't think there's any way to fudge the numbers. These are the ODE numbers that are reported as of the December reporting period. So I think that we have a good way of trying to assess, and it's comparing the data from 21 to 22. So we're taking the same reporting period and measuring from one to the other. And it very well possibly could be a motivator for other unions and other employee groups, which is why I explained to you, we actually had an employee group that took this approach in another school district. So that's where the idea even floated in my head, right, as a possibility. But it wasn't so much as a, I think it could be a motivator for an employee, but it was more of an ability to pay conversation, right? It was tied more to the additional revenue being present in order to fund the additional increase.
Because we'll have $1 million more in our budget if he succeeds in
Ballpark,
bringing those
right.
100 kids back.
Because I actually don't think it's like 10 something per kid, it's like 9 something per kid, so.
But to be clear, to encourage for him to earn this, he's going to be recruiting and going out and finding out. I mean, he's going to be actively seeking.
I have to confess, I have not had any conversations with Dr. Phillips about how he's going to attempt to do this. The conversations I had with his representative was that it would be, obviously, the ability to build relationships within the community could potentially return students to classroom. So I don't know that I call it recruiting as it was presented to me, more as the ability
Okay.
to go out and try to mend fences and build bridges and
All
to
right.
return community.
I'm also concerned that it could possibly lead to the district refusing to allow students out. We've had this conversation before, and it's been an issue, and the conservative members of this board have always been very much pro-choice in student school choice and parent school choice, right? Like if somebody wants to leave, who are we to keep them here? They need to go. However, if you have a superintendent who knows if I can keep these people, I get more money, that's a concern to me as well.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to work with Director Penner on policy language that would make sure that we aren't locking students into our district if their families want to leave.
That would be great.
I also think you guys too, it's like, it is creative, but the narrow-minded view on this would be, if the roles were reversed and I was in that situation, we're looking at $5,000 is a ton of money. $1 million is the difference between us having to lay off staff or not. And moving forward, if the entire district gets behind and decides to move forward in a positive way, 100, 200, students, we've seen the numbers go down for 4.5 years. Wouldn't it be exciting if everybody just worked at, I think the key thing Lisa said was the relationships within the whole community area. If we're that good, if we get that good, and that's the challenge here as a superintendent and a board, then we can have people coming back to our district because people are leaving other districts also. And if we get our enrollment up, then a lot of things start happening. We're not going to have all the free government money from COVID. And now we're starting to see the reality of the budget. So if everybody rolls up their sleeves and is positive and goes hard after this, $5,000 to Dr. Phillips is nothing compared to $1 million or $2 million in revenue that we see as a school district. And that's where we need to go.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the proposed contract as presented.
A second.
On the page here, we have a motion and a second. Lisa, are you ready for a vote on that?
Yep, I am.
All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. Director Shannon, Director DeHart, Director Powell, Director Fergino, Director Brown. Those not in favor, please raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Rebecca Pyros and Brandy Pinner. Motion passes 5-2. All right, Lisa, anything more there?
Nope. I think
Okay.
you have done all the business I need this evening.
We are still, Tishery, we are still a little bit ahead of schedule here, but we haven't had public comments in a while. This could be interesting. Are you ready for us to do that tonight? Yeah, so I'm gonna start off with Brandy Pinner.
Well, we're almost there. It feels like this has been one of the longest school years in history, but it's been a really busy few weeks with a lot of really great school functions. I had the opportunity to see the Joanne Austin student performance. I was able to interview seniors for Rotary Scholarship, chaperoned a high school field trip, which was a first, and I volunteered at the UN Young Fun Run yesterday. It was such a pleasure to be in school with kids and to see them engaged in learning and having a great time. I want to thank our teachers, our staff, and most importantly, also our parent volunteers who make these events possible. Our students' lives are immensely enriched because of your time and your passion. I know for many, the end of the school year brings a sense of accomplishment and relief, especially to students, staff, and parents. For those graduating seniors embarking on their next adventure, this is a time of celebration, sometimes anxiety, and lots of reflection. You can sense the excitement in the air as we near graduation ceremony and senior celebrations. Congratulations to all of our seniors for their accomplishments. It is an honor to see you all launching out into the larger world. And we know that there is hope for a better and brighter future when we see you and your endless possibility. We also know that there are students and families that struggle during the summer months. We must continue to care for and educate our students year-round while recognizing the stress our district is facing in staffing and morale. Please take care of yourself and those around you who may be struggling. And remember, it's okay to not be okay. I would also like to highlight some students. This month's character trait of perseverance feels especially relevant to many of us. To persevere is to continue in a course of action, even in the face of difficulty or with little or no prospect of success. The following students were recognized for their ability to show perseverance, even at this late date in the school year. Gunnar Eskelson, Cody Nodine, Will Matter, Thomas Brown, Jonathan Garcia Rodriguez, Gus Fogel, Ethan Codiga, Denver Knight, Lexi Tillison, Jameson Taylor, Nicholas Lay, and Ryder Sitton. Well done, everyone. With that, I will turn it back over to Chair Brown.
Gunnar, thank you. Brian, Shannon.
I'll be brief. I want to welcome Dr. Stephen Phillips as our new superintendent. I look forward to working with you to improve the education of our children. Very excited to have you here. Thoughts and prayers go out to the people suffering in Texas right now. It's a terrible thing whenever something like this happens. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Director Pyros.
I want to thank the teachers union and the classified union to remind us what a busy time this is in the schools. They work magnificently trying to make sure that every student's needs are covered, every student's learning is at the highest level, and that every student's is met with love and also the perseverance. I appreciate the teachers so much. I appreciate the teachers who have been with us for years. With Vicky Acosta, she taught my fourth grader, and I spoke in her dual language class about blindness. And all the teachers who've resigned, we will miss you. We are sorry to lose you. We appreciate all the hard work you've done. And I want to say that in March, I hadn't had a chance to report on this, but I was invited to Lori Albright's fifth grade class at Mabel Rush to help judge a class discussion on whether to allow, they had a hypothetical town meeting where there was a discussion about whether to build the dam or not. And it was so fun to listen to the students really engage in civil discourse, to present their arguments in a respectful, a thoughtful way, to present what they feel they were passionate about. And it gives me great hope for the future of our community when we are teaching young leaders how to really engage, critically think, and think of all sides of the coin and not just their particular bent. And that was a great joy to do that. And I want to congratulate Melody Kunkel. She's a fifth grade student at Mabel Rush. She was awarded the Terrific Kid from the Kiwanis Club. That just shows that we have great students and great activities in Newberg School District. And I want to also thank the high school representatives. They've brought in so much to our meetings. And I know this is getting close to the end of their term, and I want to salute you as you go on leading busy, fruitful lives. And remember that service to your community is so important, and I appreciate you all. Thank you very much. And I also think of the situation in Texas and the situation in Yamhill, Carlton. These actions touch our hearts very much and bring the preciousness of life. And that is what we're here for, is to make sure that each child is felt needed and wanted and and push to the best of their ability. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Director Hart.
Yeah, thanks for all the work putting this meeting together, and welcome aboard, Dr. Phillips. Got a lot of things to do ahead of you. I think you're up to the task, and hope that your family will be welcomed here, and that you'll find a good home in the Newberg Dundee area. And thanks to our interim board secretary for coming again tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much. Karen, and of course, Lisa, thank you so much for all you've done behind the scenes. Yep, that's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on to Raquel.
I would like to thank all the citizens who took time to write to the school board. I have read all the emails that were sent to board members, and I appreciate your comments, your concerns, and your constructive criticism. I also want to thank Maddie and Rowan for and also our our union reps for your comments tonight. I attended a couple of school events and congratulate student and staff and wish all the best on this ramp up for the end of the year. I don't want to use my comments or social media to virtual signal for participating in school events. I also would like to take a few moments to welcome Dr. Phillips to our district. I'm looking forward and working with you when elevating the students and their academic achievement. You have the support of our community. On one note, I need to address the board in regards to our commitment to follow board policies. Policy BFF states that board members are expected to, and there are 22 items, I'm going to read number 10, recognize that decisions are made by a majority vote and should be supported by all board members. Number 19, give the staff the respect and consideration due skilled professional personnel. Number 21, when using social media, websites, and news media, board members will treat and refer to other board members, staff, students, and the public with respect. There have been at least 2 incidents where Director Pinner violated the oath taken to support policies of our school district. And in the public forum, Facebook, using an account that has its URL facebook.com/Newberg School Board, she has made derogatory comments about Dr. Phillips. I ask that we all follow board policy, treat each other with due respect, cordiality, and be professional in all interactions.
Thank you. Director Powell.
Yeah, first off, I want to let Dr. Phillips know how grateful I am that you applied and are willing to take on this task at hand. And if there's anything I can do to help in that process, please let me know. Since it's been a while since we've had any board comments, there were some past opportunities that I would like to share. One of the opportunities I had was touring the Wellness Center. And I wanted to thank Katie for taking the time out of your day to show me around. I was really impressed with the resources that they provided for the students in the store with showers, washer and dryer, food. It was pretty impressive. I also wanted to thank Josh Reed for his time and showing me around the Catalyst School and for sharing what that school is all about and how it is impacting and helping students. I also had the privilege to attend the Midsummer's Night Dream at Joanne Austin, and it was so fun to be, just brought back fond memories of when my kids were little at that age and going to their programs. I want to thank Mrs. Davidson and Mrs. Dalton for inviting us and for doing such a great job with the kids. It was great to meet you both after the play too. That was fun. And I wanted to shout out to our law officers. Last weekend, we had a break from the rain for just enough time to honor our men and women in law enforcement. It was so good to see other board members there, both city and school, plus many other community members. And so I just wanted to thank you, the police officers, for making our town one of the safest and for keeping our schools safe. And then just thanking the student reps. Hope you guys have a great summer And before I end, I would like to address the behavior of one of our board members and that is breaking some of the board policies, BBF, by not being respectful to all staff and other board members. That includes in person and social media. Please do better, be kind, respectful, and professional. Thank you.
All right, going last here. Welcome, Dr. Phillips. Thank you for tackling this. We will be here to help you. I'd also like to say a big, huge thanks to Tishri Tucker, Shannon Andreas, and Nikki Fowler. I know it's a lot of work and it's been a crazy time. And so I thank all three of you very much. Nikki, you're always, so good with getting the numbers going and just keeping us on task. So thank you. Shannon, I know you and Tishri worked a lot in the last number of months together. So thank you to you two very much. My second one was to Rowan and Maddie. It's been awesome. I think Rowan ought to be like the face of our school district. She's her and Maddie could probably teach a lot of us adults how to be nicer. They're super cool. Also, a shout out to Marcus Hopkins, Drew Selke, and Nick Frampton. I was co-director of the OSA state tennis tournament last weekend. They had one of the best seasons in Newberg High School tennis history from Coach Aaron Rauch. These are three kids I coached in the past. And like Rowan and Maddie, they show the best in our schools. They're just all great kids. So I think my fourth one is the word grace. It doesn't have to be a biblical term. It can just be a term in life. I don't think we can talk about caring and thanking everybody if we don't live it. Grace is something that we can give out freely to everybody we meet, everybody we know all the time. And it's hard. We definitely have experienced that on this board. We've experienced it in our school district. We experience it in the community. But if we can start on this board by showing more grace, I think that we will find that we'll find more joy and happiness. We will definitely help others out, even if they disagree with us or we don't like the way they think. This isn't a knock. I just think one of the most graceful things I've seen in all my years of Newberg schools was 3 years ago when I first got elected to the school board. Brian and Rebecca and I got to go to the Bend state conferences. And I didn't know Brian at all. I actually met him down there. I knew Rebecca because we worked together at the high school. And Brian drove Rebecca to Bend. I watched Brian. It's one of the first things that endeared me to him is how much grace he showed Rebecca by helping her around a difficult place for 3 days. Not easy with Rebecca's eyesight, and she needed help when she got in places. She's obviously great, but Brian showed a lot of grace. I think sometimes whether or not you're mad at Brian or not, that's what I'm talking about. Grace can be something that we can freely give. It doesn't cost any money. And I'd like to just see us moving forward tonight with Dr. Phillips, that we just show more grace to each other, because if we don't, then we just keep, running around the same problems. And we can disagree, and that's okay. We can even argue, and that's okay. But I think, the grace part, something that, again, it doesn't have to be biblical. It can just be allowing other people to say what they think. And we don't have to be sharp tongued about it. We don't have to be mean about it. I just think it's something that we need to model if we expect people like Rowan and Maddie and Marcus, Drew and Nick, and the other names mentioned tonight to follow our lead. And I just think that's something, go home, please, and let's try to do better. So that's my last comment. And Dr. Phillips, you're your first chance to make, as our new superintendent, comments. You're on.
All right, well, thank you. I will follow Director Shannon's lead and be brief. First of all, thank you very much. I am grateful for this opportunity. I think the sky's the limit for Newberg. The town, the school district, the staff, especially the kids. So I'm extremely happy to be here and excited. I do want to point out Shanna. She's already helped me out a lot. I was able to email her, I guess, Monday and say, I'm going to start showing up. So start telling me what to do. And I've already met with several people, and in the next 2 days, I think I'm meeting with 15 more people from buildings and mostly central office, but buildings as well. And I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about relationships and moving forward. So once again, thank you for the opportunity.
Right, appreciate that. Lisa Freely, I don't know if we'll ever have you back again.
I'm not on this agenda.
Are you ever coming back?
Well, I'm not done. I mean, I'm still your attorney, I mean, unless you're firing me and I don't know about it. Have I not been provided notice? Of the fact that I
won't make
put
that
out to pasture?
So we don't have to be mushy tonight and say goodbye.
No, now, the question ultimately becomes, and we will have this conversation as you start preparing your board meetings, as to whether I need to physically be present at all of your board meetings. I don't know that I need to do that, but I will be here. I'm not.
Like
I'm not-
having you.
I appreciate that. But we'll sit down, we'll figure out what the next, I will not be at the next board meeting. I can tell you that for sure, because I'm going to spend quality time with my foot elevated after they try to put my Achilles back together. So, yeah, so I have that happening on the 6th. So we're not doing anything that requires me to have a cogent thought on the 7th. Because my doctor seems to think there will be some lovely pain meds involved in this whole experience. So.
And Tishri, your grace has been certainly noticed. So thank you so much.
Well, I would just like to say, if it's all right, how much I've enjoyed working with this board and getting to know you all. I've always been blessed with a great board at the ESC. It's always been a real pleasure to work with. And so I was a little bit apprehensive when this opportunity presented itself, because I wasn't really used to that. But I just think that you all have such a servant's heart for kids, and I appreciate all of you individually and what you bring to the table, and that you all have the right intent. And so I love the word grace. We use it a lot at the ESC, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the future and what you're able to do for the district together with Dr. Phillips.
Thanks, Tishri. Appreciate you a lot. All right, I think we got everything covered.
I'd just like to say